Thank you very much, Linda. I want to first of all recognize my wife who's here. Many of you know her, Jennifer. And I also want to recognize Dale Durr. A lot of you know Dale Durr, retired Air Force. He is head of our Berks County Veterans Affairs Department. He's in the back. He has a table and all kinds of information. I feel like I have Marco Rubio water up here. There's no safe place to put it, so I want to start by thanking you for all that you do. It cannot be said too often that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance, and often we connect that to service in the military, and that's very true. But at its very core, our country depends on people that fundamentally care not just about what's happening now, but what the future may bring, and care enough to do something about it. You've been doing that since the Berks County Patriots first met a number of years ago here in this building, and I thank you for it. I also want to thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening to address issues that most people either aren't aware of, or if they are, they don't understand how they impact each of us, often every day. When I ran for commissioner back in 2007, the most common question I received was, what does a commissioner do? It's now 2016, and the most common question I receive is, what does a commissioner do? And why is that? I will suggest to you that while we have a serious deficiency in our public education system when it comes to teaching young people about American history and about how our government functions, we have a very long history of not teaching about the value and importance of local government, and in particularly county government. Now, how can I prove very simply how important county government is? Look at the county budget. Now I'm going to give you a piece of history over the last 8 years. When I took office in 2008, the budget we inherited was $532 million. The budget this year is $465 million. We've never been close to the $532 million since, because I believe the number one job of any government at any level is fiscal responsibility, because if your fiscal house isn't in order, at some point, nothing else matters. Really. At some point, it's the debt, it's the financial crisis that drives everything in Harrisburg. And it's the debt and the financial crisis that drives everything in Washington, D.C. So that is first. But when you look at the $465 million budget, it's always telling where that money is spent and where the money comes from. We get annually in property tax, county property tax only, $136 million. If you do the math, that's just under 30%, 29 point something percent of our total budget. So the question is, where's the other money come from and what is it for? It's overwhelmingly state and federal money to execute various state and federal programs at the local level. We rely heavily on the dollars that come from Harrisburg and Washington to do a variety of tasks. And we're not talking about welfare. Welfare is a federal and state program. I'm talking about a lot of other areas: transportation, aging services, children and youth services, etc. That's why, and I'm going to quickly go through some topics and leave time for questions. Where's Rod? You're all the way in the back there. How am I supposed to see? You're supposed to tell me when I have 15 minutes left. Because okay. The first thing I want to talk about is the broken budget process in Harrisburg. Now, when you look at the budget, let's also look at school districts, municipalities, county government. We do not have the option of not passing a balanced budget on time. Year after year, we pass the balanced budget on time. It's very troubling to me that July 1 goes by and it's no big deal.
Carl's going to do the mic. Okay.
September 1 goes by and it's no big deal. In fact, we stand here today without a 2015-16 budget. Oh, we have significant parts of it in place. But what does it mean to you as a taxpayer? What does it mean to county government? Now first, let me make something plain so any legislator understands that I understand this key point. The budget process at the state level is far more complicated than the budget process at the county, municipal, or school district level. We have one body that debates, deliberates, and ultimately votes on the budget. Your school board, your township supervisors, or township commissioners, or your city council and mayor, they would have two. And the county, you have to be able to count to two. If you get two commissioners to agree, you pass the budget. So I acknowledge that this process is far more complicated. What you have is three equal but separate groups. And I'm not talking about the division of government, but the Senate has their say, the House has their say, and the governor has his say. Now the governor, in my opinion, has made an enormous mistake. He has assumed that he has some kind of a mandate because he got elected statewide by a significant margin, and that gives him the right to dictate to the other two bodies in the process, and that simply isn't the case. But mistake number one, Governor Wolf is the first governor in over 40 years to receive a budget and veto the entire thing. You see, most governors in most states have something called a line item veto. 70% of the budget that Governor Wolf got on his desk was either exactly what he asked for or slightly more. And he vetoed the entire thing, which threw the process back to square one. Without a doubt, that was the single biggest mistake in this process. He finally did the line item veto after 6 months. The second problem I have is, ask yourself a question. If you're, well, none of us are professional sports figures, but if you were, and you had a contract, when would you start negotiating on your contract? Would you wait till the contract was up? No, you'd start negotiations early on. I also blame the leadership in the House and the Senate for not demanding to sit down with the governor and leadership the day after the governor's budget announcement last year and say, we're miles apart. I got tired of hearing legislators say to me in September and October and November, we're negotiating. And I would say to them, I appreciate that, but we should have been negotiating last March. And we should be negotiating right now. But here's a second problem with the governor. The governor, when he line item vetoed, played politics again. One of the items he cut in half is the ag budget. They would say, why would he cut the ag budget in half? Penn State Extension, Berks County, #1 industry. Penn State Extension provides tremendous assistance to our farmers. They're virtually zeroed out. Here's why. Because agriculture is primarily important in counties that are controlled by Republican legislators. Pure politics, folks. No other reason makes any sense. The third issue that I have with the governor is his idea of negotiations. Anyone listen to his speech when he announced the 16-17 budget? That is not exactly the way to sit down and try to work things out in basically destroying the Republican leadership and the House. We have a leadership problem. But here's how it's affected you. Counties across the Commonwealth were not paid last year. At the peak, Berks County in December was owed over $27 million, and it wasn't all state money. The majority of it was federal money that had gone from the federal government to the state that the state was holding. not paying us. Number two, many counties right around us, we did not have to borrow. Lancaster had to borrow, Dauphin had to borrow, Montgomery had to borrow. Many counties around us had to freeze their hiring. Almost all counties stopped paying their providers that are providing services in the children and youth area, in the drug and alcohol area, in the mental health area. And those entities had to borrow money. The question is, who is going to foot the bill for the carrying costs of these counties? Taxpayers. Taxpayers. There's some changes I think that need to happen so that this doesn't happen quite this way again. Number one, I suggest we move the state budget to a calendar year, just like counties. Do you realize the county's budget, we're working now on the 2017 budget. We'll take most of the year looking at every single department, looking at impacts 5 years out. The state is a July 1st. So when we did our budget for 16, do you know how much information we had from the state on the money that they were going to provide to us? Nothing. We didn't even have the dollars for the second half of 2015 because there was no budget. It would be very helpful to everyone involved if we were on the same budget cycle. Another thing that would help is the politics. When Governor Wolf was elected in 2014, he came into office, and in March, he had to submit a budget. He didn't even have all of his cabinet secretaries in place, and he was submitting a budget. When I took office in 2008, a budget had already been voted on in December. I started working on the budget for 2009. To me, that makes a lot of sense. But the biggest issue is the right people need to feel the financial pain. In 2009, when the last budget crisis occurred up till about Thanksgiving, many state employees were not paid. State parks shut down. Some other departments cut back services. The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania ruled that the state couldn't do that. So this time, they just stopped paying counties. I suggest that if the legislature and the governor miss the July 1st deadline, we have a law in place that says the governor, the cabinet secretaries, and the legislators do not get paid their salary. They don't get any expenses paid until they pass and ratify a real budget. That's a core job. A major issue that we have been fighting at the state level with the County Commissioners Association, and the County Commissioners Association is Democrat and Republican. You would be amazed how important the prevailing wage issue is to counties, to schools, to municipalities. The prevailing wage law was passed in 1962, and it basically said that any public works project of $25,000 or greater had to use something called prevailing wage. Basically, it is the prevailing union wage in an area. Does anyone know how many times that threshold has been increased since 1962? Zero. Zero. If we simply index that number for inflation, it would be over $196,000 today. Now let me make it clear. I believe prevailing wage is wrong. It is a protection game to protect unions. I believe we should be able to hire businesses that are responsible businesses that can provide the proper insurance, the proper bonding, and come in and bid. Let businesses bid based on their work, the quality of their work, their labor, their materials. That's the way it should be, because right now, that adds 25 to 35% to the cost of construction, and almost nothing we do is under $25,000. Here's what's scary, folks. We campaigned. In 2013, I was president of the association. our number one issue was prevailing wage reform. We knew that we didn't have the votes to repeal it, so we fought to try to raise the threshold to where it should be, because that would be a huge savings for our taxpayers. With a Republican governor, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate, we could get a bill out of the House or the Senate. That's shaky. And that is an issue that impacts every single one of you. You want to look at cost of school construction? Ask yourself what happens if your school construction was 25 to 35% less than it is today. Ask yourself what would happen if a majority of the smaller projects the county government does. Carpet. 3 years ago, we had to do a carpet project. Not only did it raise the cost because we had to use prevailing wage because it was over $25,000, we had one of the major local carpet companies decline because prevailing wage is not just about rates, it's also about cumbersome paperwork that many people look as traps by the Department of Labor and Industry. We need fundamental change. Third, 2015, we saw the beginning of roughly 20 plus laws that have become known as the Sandusky laws. Now, let me make something clear. What happened in the case of Jerry Sandusky and what he did to children is horrific. It's unconscionable. But folks, I'm very tired of politicians that every time they hear about a problem, the answer is another law. We have too many laws in this country. And I will tell you, the Sandusky laws, in my opinion, while well-intentioned, they didn't talk to county government when they put these laws in place. They didn't ask, what impact will this have on county government? I don't even think they really thought through, would this stop Jerry Sandusky? Because here's what it means. In Berks County, we started measuring the impact right away. What impact? And when you have questions, if you want more detail, I can give it to you. But here's the bottom line. In 2015, our caseload in Children and Youth Services increased by 38%, directly attributable to this. Number two, guess what? You talk to our legislators and they will tell you we hate unfunded mandates from Washington, D.C. But they get sent to us all the time, and the Sandusky laws did not provide one dime to county government. It's cost us over $2 million. We did not make new hires right away. We made our departments prove that this was a real increase and it was a long-term increase. By the end of the year, we had hired 7 new people, 5 caseworkers exclusively to deal with the increase, and 2 new county detectives in our sex abuse unit just to deal with the increase. Look, I am not against protecting children. And I've heard that from some legislators that have heard me talk about this. That's not what it's about. I want to protect children. But a couple of weeks ago, I had a family in my office that got caught in the bigger, broader Sandusky net. A farm family from here in Berks County, where tragically a young father ran over a child with the mower. The child was alive and doing very well. He was in my office, a little boy. The state police investigated immediately. They ruled it was an accident. Our district attorney investigated immediately and ruled it was an accident. But because of the new language in the Sandusky laws, our Children and Youth Department ruled that he was a threat to children and should not be able to be with his children the rest of their childhood alone. And they appealed. If they hadn't appealed, he would be dealing with that. He won on appeal. That net is too big. We need to look at the results. It's not enough to say, I passed a bill to deal with the issue. Thirdly, criminal